Mike. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearings for Suburban Panel 2. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider planning applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centrepoint Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived, available for future viewing by the public. My name is Fabien Poulin. I'll be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, and Heather McLean. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear and affirm an oath today that they have fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application followed by questions for the applicant and the city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak. We may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant who has the burden of proof will have an opportunity to make the final comments and reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means we won't be delivering it today. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decisions and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have a question about today's procedure that we'll be following today? Any questions from the public? We did register. Yes, you will. If you'd like to come down and register with one of the people at the front desk here, that would be great. So we know who you are and where you're from. Thanks. Well, we have several applications to hear today, but first need to deal with some preliminary procedural matters. Are there any declarations of interest by any of the members for this panel or any other panel of the City of Committee of Adjustment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, for panel 2 tomorrow, I'm in conflict on 72 Armstrong. The reason is I was involved in preparing previous comments for the Hintonburg Community Association on that same property before I was on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Noted. So we have none for, okay, none for Heather either. Okay. So we have to confirm minutes of the 2 most recent hearings. So the minutes of March the 5th, I'd like to ask for approval of these minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And the next minutes to be approved are March 19. All those in favor of approving March 19th minutes, please raise your hands. Those minutes are also approved. We will now deal with adjournment requests. And I note that there are no formal adjournment requests today. However, the panel does have an adjournment request they would like to discuss with the applicant. And that has to do with 814 High Street and 820 High Street. And I'm looking for William Ritzy, who is the agent for the applicant, and Khalil Nassery. Would you please come down, please?
Good afternoon. My name is William Ritzy, agent for Mr. Nasri, the owner of the property.
Your address, sir?
4 Finley Avenue, Ottawa.
Thanks very much. I got to say, we were having a little bit of difficulty. The panel was struggling with your present planning rationale. And that's the purpose of why we would like to discuss it with you and potentially have it adjourned till our next meeting so that there could be a recirculation so the public can understand. Because if we didn't understand it, I'm sure the public didn't understand it as well. So I'd like now to turn to panel member Baltz for first question.
Yes, so can you briefly take us through what has changed from what was circulated as the variances to what the actual variances are?
I believe in September, when we first came to the committee, I believe you were the one that brought up the idea, the sense of not addressing the percentage of landscape. And that was an omission on the first go around. And we went back and forth many times with forestry as well as planning regarding trying to look at the official plan, the 40% coverage, canopy, green space, as well as the amount of landscaped area. But to answer your question, the major change was from a dual access to a single access. And by having a single driveway accessing both properties, that allowed for a number of things. One, it addressed transportation's issue of adding an additional driveway. It also freed up a land area for additional landscaping, which forestry has thanked us for and believe that we've met the criteria of the official plan. But the confusion came with what percentage of landscape area had to be addressed. The original one on the application was for meeting 30% of landscape area in the rear yard only. That between myself and back and forth with forestry and planning, we realized that it's not, in this particular zone, the R4N zone, not the R4AU zone. It's not about rear yard landscaping. It's about landscaping for the total lot. So instead of the 30% rear yard, the wording should have read 30% of the total yard, which we met, I believe, in both cases around 26% as percent of landscape for the total yard, and it was roughly the same percentage for the rear yard. Also to be noted that we met the 40% required landscaped area for the front yard. So from a streetscape point of view, what we're asking for is a variance really has very little impact.
But if I may, Mr. Chair, so what was circulated in terms to the public and posted? The variance that has to do with the reduced, which is D, I think, in both cases,
Yes.
Was incorrect in the circulation, and because it referred to rear lot area instead of total lot area.
That's correct.
For the test. So the numbers were also incorrect.
Although the percentages of what we're asking for, the 30% in both cases, are pretty much the same.
Right, but the number of meters and was
the areas would change, incorrect. Of course, yes. It's interesting, though, I received no comments on the fact that we were asking for a reduced rear yard area and landscape. So it doesn't seem to be an issue with anyone on the circulation. And planning also has also reinforced the idea that recirculation would not be required.
Any further comments, Mr. Ball?
We want to address the 4 tests versus other tests issue now.
First, ask the other.
That's fine.
The other
yeah.
panel members if they have any questions. Mr. Barrett? No, thanks. Okay, Mr. Baltz, do you want to talk about the 4 tests?
Yeah, so I mean, if this goes forward to a hearing today, or when it goes forward to a hearing, the variances in the planning rationale have been justified using the 4 tests, which are appropriate for variances. For the severance, there's separate tests, but the severance justification of the severance seems to be under the same section of the planning rationale and referring to the 4 tests for variance rather than the section of the Planning Act that has to do with severances. So whenever this is discussed, whether today or next time, we will have to hear evidence that the severance request complies with the provisions of the Planning Act that deal with severance, not the provisions that deal with variances. So
Well, the severance is primarily to achieve.
we don't have to hear that now, but
Okay.
we'll have to, that we should be prepared to do that. I think the planning department might help with that, but we should note that the report was incorrect in treating the severances under the part of the Planning Act that has to deal only with variances.
Okay. All right, now I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to adjourn this application. All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hands. All those who'd like to hear this application today. We'll hear your application in line, sir. Thank you very much. So we will now deal with 858 Woodroffe Avenue. And I'm looking for the agent. C. Sun.
Consent.
Oh, consent first. No, okay. Just before I get to this application, we have two applications. You can stay where you are. It's okay. We have two applications that are on the consent agenda or the unopposed applications, fast track consent agenda. Those need to qualify for a quick decision those are the following. No objections or concerns from the public, the parties, or the applicant, or the city. No amendments required, no registered speakers. No sign, they have posted the sign posting declaration. An agent or their applicant has confirmed that they agree with all the requested conditions, and there are no questions from panelists. The following two applications are on this unopposed agenda. Application 180 Bradford Street and 1128 Parisien. First of all, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this agenda. 180 Bradford Street is.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Due to the number of people here, could we just have a call out?
Thanks very much for that reminder. So are there anybody from the public that would like to speak on 180 Bradford Street? Okay. I'd like to ask the panel then for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 180 Bradford Street is approved. Now we're going to look at 1128 Parisien Street. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak on 1128 Parisien Street? No one here to speak to that. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application, 1128 Parisien Street. All those in favor, please raise your hands. That application is also approved. Now we'll move back into line going in order. Application number 1 has to do with 958 Woodroffe Avenue and a C. Sun. Are you available?
Yeah.
Is your microphone? Okay, somebody come over and help you. Please state your name and your address, sir.
Sure. My name is Chang. This is the architect on this project. The property I present is 958 Woodroffe Avenue,
And what's your address, sir?
33 Willow Glen Drive,
Thank you
Canada.
very much. We have a few amendments to the application to read into the record with respect to file number B0028. The frontage is now 7.54 meters from 7.57 meters. Is that correct, sir?
Correct, yeah.
And B0029, the frontage is now 7.4 meters. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And let's see. And there's also minor variances A00036 that to permit a reduced total interior side yard setback of 2.92 meters and 1.22 meters and 1.7 meters. Is that
Correct.
correct, sir? Okay. having to do with minor variance A 00037 and 956 Woodroffe Avenue to permit a reduced total interior side yard setback of 2.94 meters, 1.24 meters, and 1.7 meters. Is that correct, sir?
Correct, yeah.
Wonder if you could just give us a brief description of your application today.
Sure. This property is 958 Woodroffe. It's inner urban area and also along the main street, city street, and also in the involving neighborhood. So our proposal is demolish existing single house to sever the site and build two long detached dwelling place. So we are providing the middle class unit for this neighborhood, and also use the existing city infrastructure and the transportation. So we provide more housing unit in compact form. And also we provide 15 minutes walk distance to the public transit. And also there's a school around. And also our proposal meet front yard setback, rear yard setback, and we also meet the minimum landscape for the front yard. And also our parking is less than 70%, maximum required by zoning. That is the overall picture for our proposal.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions about this presentation. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Barrett. Well, thank you. Okay, Mr. McLean, Mr. Balls.
A question through you, Mr. Chair. Is there usable amenity space? I know that there's 70% parking in the back in the buffer area, but is there an area where people can go outside and use the outside?
Yeah, we provide our site plan. We do have the landscape area, so people can have the play space at the back rear yard, and also front yard. We do have the landscape as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask our planning department or the city's planning department to make some comments with respect to this application.
We have no concerns. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I would now like to ask the public if they'd like to speak. I have 3 registered speakers. The first is Haley Scholdice. Are you here, Ms. Scholdice?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Schuldice is online.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Scholdice. Good afternoon, Ms. Scholdice. Ms. Scholdice, are you there? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll jump over Ms. Scholdice and move on to the next person who'd like to speak on this from the public. Michael Frampton, are you available? Come on down into the speakers table. Yes, please. Please state your name and your address, sir. You need to press the green button. There you go.
Michael Frampton, 954 Woodroffe Avenue.
Please go ahead, make your presentation.
Try to do this in 5 minutes or less. The concerns are there are 3 50-year plus maple trees in the backyard of 958. One of them has already been removed and the other 2 are going to be removed in the fall. My question to that is, what are the drainage plans to the equivalents of 3 half-century trees that take care of the water, the rain? Where's the rain going to go? There's also concerns about parking, snow removal, and garbage buildup.
Okay. Is that the extent of your questions?
I think that is the majority of the
Okay.
concerns.
Can the planner on this file address any of those? I believe some of the questions can be answered through the conditions you put on the property.
So as you mentioned, the 3 trees that are greater than 50 centimeters,
50 years.
50 centimeters at diameter breast height, are to be removed. And so there's a compensation of 9 new trees which are required. And so 2 trees are proposed to be planted in place of the 1 city tree lost to construction. And there's suggested replanting locations, which are shown on their tree information report.
Okay, I wasn't aware there were going to be replacement trees. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Would the applicant like to add anything?
No,
Three.
one more.
Oh, sorry.
Can you address the grading and drainage plans? Because he was concerned about the grading and drainage.
So for one of the conditions is that
Having some technical difficulties, so bear with us. And we're doing it both online as well, so we'll have to be respectful of their needs too.
so stormwater management will be required to be managed on site and directed on the lot.
Okay, the concern is from previous developments further up on Woodroffe, it's Chicago private, and also further up the road. There were issues of drainage problems in the adjacent properties. And so that's a concern being at 954. There's a concern that the drainage, we may have drainage issues that may affect the foundation. So we're just concerned that that whatever the drainage is, existing drainage with that nature has allowed for, that it's going to be at least equivalent to that in the development plans.
One of the conditions is they produce a drainage and grading plan, okay, before, and it has to be approved by the city. So it'll all be addressed at that time. Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, sir?
It answers the question regarding the trees and the drainage needed for their removal. There are concerns of regarding the snow, buildup of snow being on the property line, and also garbage removal, because the development is going to bring in more people and more garbage. And so there's a concern, because we have noticed on our walks in the neighborhood up the road that there is a problem with garbage at these bigger, long townhouse types, or the Chicago private area. There's an issue with snow being pushed up. There's a constant battle between the sidewalk plows and the city plows, the street and the sidewalks, and the snow gets accumulated and pushed up
It's pretty
southbound.
pretty consistent, isn't it? Pretty much through the city too, when that happens.
Yeah.
Can you address that, Mr. Chen, where the snow will be piled? The site plan you provided, if we can put the site plan up, you can maybe show us where the snow will be piled.
Yeah, thank you for the neighbor. All of your concern have be well considered and discussed with the city, and we have a special consultant. For the storage, and garbage storage and snow storage, if you look at my site plan, I show the conceptual location where snow going to be stored and where its garbage will be stored. And that will be next stage for the garbage, in terms of stored garbage. I know zoning by law allow to have a shed or in the principal building. So in next stage, when we do the building design, building permit, we will work with city to apply the city requirement, either apply the garbage storage in the building or in the backyard. So that's garbage concern. And back to the drainage. Also, if you look at my site plan, I provide 2 catch basin. So the owner agree, we're gonna collect all of the stormwater runoff in the parking lot, in the shared driveway to the catch basin. Then we'll direct to the city's stormwater pipe under the Woodroffe. and the snow. And that will be part of the management plan. So my owner, Gray, will have the proactive storage removal plan. So we will, yeah, that will be my design for the site plan during the building permit application.
Appreciate it. I
Thank you.
just lived in the neighborhood for almost 30 years, and I'm not against development and building, but just want to maintain the fabric of the neighborhood and be considerate of the neighbors in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate any comment will be improved the design in next stage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frampton. Now I'd like to go back online and see if we can find Haley Scholdice. Are you available, Ms. Scholdice? Ms. Scholdice, are you available? Oh, I see your name. Oh. And you're muted, sir. There you are.
There we are. Sorry, it's been a while. I'm a little retired. So my name is Harley Scholdice, and I'm a
My
resident
apologies.
of 957 Winnington, which is directly behind the proposed property. And my family has been in the neighborhood since 1967. And obviously, my 90-year-old mother is upset about change, but I've sort of worked to say, hey, listen, the world is changing, and it's not 1960 anymore. My concern.
Mr. Scholdice, I'm
Sorry?
having a tough time. I think everybody's having a hard time hearing you. There's some feedback, or you're not close enough to your microphone.
Let me adjust that. How does that sound? Better?
Well, you got to speak a little bit more for us to hear.
Okay. Let's
much
do
better.
this. 1 second.
I can hear a lot of feedback, some children in the background.
Sorry, I'm having my lunch. Are we better?
You're coming in and out again.
Are we better?
No,
Okay. Let me say very briefly that all I want is a fence at the back of the property to keep us shielded from the headlights, garbage, and snow removal.
okay. I'm not sure that we can address that, sir, because it really is only the 4 tests that we are addressing today that you need to address in objection of this application. So adding a fence to the property, I don't think is one of those items that we can address here.
Okay, well, that's very good. Thank you. I have no other objection, and I'll speak to the owner directly.
That's great. Thank you very much. The
Thank you,
third
sir.
person. Thank you, Mr. Scholdice. Now on to the third person like to speak from the public. Meg Cho, are you available? Good afternoon. Very good. Can you please state your name and your address, please?
Divulge my address to the whole world.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But thank you very much for holding the hearing today and giving us the opportunity to pass our comments. My comments are, first of all, I was online and received one of those letters. I just wanted to say that multiple links were not available. When you click on it, and I sent the email as well, it shows that the page is not available, and it actually required some kind of quite a few research before I actually got to plans, and it was by fluke that I managed to follow on the plans. So if I understand if other people didn't have access to it, it was quite hard to find because the links were not available.
How long ago was this?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was online too, and I used that same thing, and I found every one of those reports.
Really? Because
Yeah.
I even took the platform. Yes.
That's okay. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah.
Just that, anyway.
Sometimes I know it's me and my computer, but just to be sure.
Okay.
And so that's one. The other one, I think, so I also saw the plan where it was showing garbage and snow removal. One of my concerns is that if you look at the neighbors, they all have plants, they have children, they have dogs, they have gardens, beautiful gardens. And we have like vegetable gardens and everything. So by putting the garbage, because if you look at the new developments on our street, like 912, 866, and others of similar design, garbage collection has been a huge problem. And I myself, I don't have much in the back, but I had to call on rodent problems because on the rodent services to keep that contained on my property because we have children and, we don't want these things. But the collection, the garbage collection has been terrible because what they do is they rent out the spaces to like 9, 12 tenants for per unit, 2 students, and then they don't manage the garbage at all. So we see them collecting on the outside, we see them flying across our lawns. And I think it required a few comments to City of Ottawa before they can be contained. So now that they're proposing to put it on the edge, my concern is that we're going to get even more rodent problems, leakages of these garbages and glass. Will they come over? Because currently we don't have hard fences into the ground. It's very neighborly in our area. So for them to put it, stick it in the back and have it dealt, I'm not sure it could be dealt properly. Currently at 912, they have it in the middle between the properties, and it contains it from the neighbors, but still, it still needs to be managed. And I think that's where it's visible. It's that to make it more visible would be better because that way we'll address it. To push it to the back, we won't see it. The other problem is we're on Woodroffe. The salt is extremely heavy. So pushing the snow to the back when you have cars, salt and everything, and without any green space, I think one of my question is how much green space is left in the back? Because if that green space is allocated for snow, it's pretty much the salt that's on the road. It's going to go into our gardens. It's going to go into the food that we're eating. So how is that addressed? The trees, I didn't see any spaces, green spaces for trees because it's taking so much, the parking is taking that much space. So one of the questions that we asked earlier is for landscaping or usable amenities, are there any green spaces? And what type of trees is being planted? Is it like the small bushes, 9 small bushes? Or is it like some kind of tree that will allow for drainages when you're taking down these 3 centennial trees down? I'm not sure if like the 5 minutes, I should just push everything out and then let them answer, or do I?
You've got 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes left.
Okay, so I'll just put out all my points. Perfect.
Okay.
The other one is I understand that we want to we want to encourage residents and we don't have enough housing. But the other factor is also the environmental factor and all the social consideration. So yes, put the units up, and we have very friendly neighbors, so glad to share all of those. But how are they going to make sure that we still keep our environment? And one of the places is they actually elevated the whole housing by a foot on the whole terrain. So the water was actually going towards the other 5 neighboring properties, and that's around 866 Woodroffe. And you can see that the water and everything is on the line. So is that going to damage my house? By them reducing the setback, or I'm not sure of the term, but reducing it from 3 meters to a little bit less, then they're actually maximizing on their property. For safety and security reasons, with that little space, how are they going to make it accessible to people? Accessibility, wheelchair, if the entrance is on that side, how are they going to make it safe, clear from and I have people coming back in my backyard that are unwanted. They do stuff in the back. So if you're going to put that little space, how can I ensure that the syringes are not going to be found, that there's not providing a space for them to hide and throw these type of dangerous, hazardous items. So there's that, garden, garbage, snow removal. I think building elevation setback for safety, snow collection. And yeah, those are pretty much my points.
Okay, thanks very much. When the public speaks on these issues, they really should address the 4 tests that are required to have this application approved. So
Okay.
they should be looking at making arguments that say they don't meet the 4 tests because of this, because of this, and because of this.
And
That's okay.
yeah, this is my first time, so
Quite okay.
I'm so sorry. Can I ask, what are these 4 tests? I know you mentioned it before,
Sure.
but if you don't mind taking the time.
No,
Thank you.
not a problem.
I wasn't even sure how much I can say or if I should be saying something.
So the 4 tests are: is it desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure? That's the first test.
Okay.
Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Does it maintain, that's the second test. Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And the last test, is it minor? So those are the arguments you should be making when discussing or opposing an application.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Now- sorry.
go ahead.
I'm now going to ask the panel if they have any questions for you.
Okay.
Mr. Barrett? No. Okay. Mr. Blaine?
Okay.
Mr. Bowles?
May I direct a question to planning in response to one of the questions?
Absolutely.
So the issue of green space and tree planting has come up on almost all of these. So I'm wondering, I noted in the Pred report that forestry commented about large growing trees being desirable and 8 trees being planned and 9 are required, so compensation for 1 is needed. So I'm wondering if you could briefly confirm that that 8 trees are going to be planted and kind of where they are and whether there's enough green space to meet the requirements.
Thank you. Yes. So according to the TIR, as mentioned, it does show. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up.
Going to ask if we could see it, because I think would answer a lot of the questions that have come forward.
Is there a minimum required green space that needs to be kept?
So there is a requirement. So they've got, let's see how many. They've got 10 conditions that they have to, and they've agreed to abide by to move forward on this property. And one of them is cash in lieu, but the second one is tree planting conditions. So there has to be a tree planting plan. Okay. There has to be independent water services, and that's just getting water to the place, and a grading and drainage plan. So those two, the grading and drainage plan and the tree planting plan, are probably going to solve your issues because they have to present those. You'll be able to, if they haven't done it already, if you go back and take a look at the website, you'll be able to see that. And if you call up the different reports, they will be there. I saw them yesterday and I saw them again this morning.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
they're-
saw the circles, right?
No,
were those?
they're actually reports.
Okay.
Okay, that you'll be able to look up and see what their plan is.
Mhm.
But yeah, those things have to be addressed before they can move forward with the application. They have to be completed in 2 years.
Okay.
So-
Because I didn't see exactly like the size, and what I'm referring to is like 912. They had removed a lot of lots, but the size of it were bushes. So that's why I was wondering, is there like a type of tree that's required in terms of sizes, or is it little ones are considered trees?
I
All
see
that-
the city forester has,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay,
think that's who
Okay.
could address this for us.
okay, perfect. So just in summary,
So we have the city forester online right now.
Oh.
She would be able to address the issue. Ms. Young?
Okay, thank you for the question. So on the plan that they've provided right now, they are showing 6 medium trees And they don't say exactly which ones, but they do provide a list of possible medium-sized trees. So those are ones that generally grow to about 14 meters in height. So not shrubs, like these are reasonable sized trees. And there are 2 small trees proposed in the back where it's under hydro. So those would be smaller, but should grow up to about, 5 or 6 meters in height. So should be more than shrubs, and they do need to be a minimum of 50 millimeters in caliper stock. So not just a little plant that you buy from Canadian Tire or somewhere. So I don't know if that addresses your question. Yeah, feel free to ask if you have more.
You have any more questions, Ms. Cho?
And so the trees over there is going onto the garbage area? Is that what it was? On the left side, blue, is it overlapping?
Blue left side, top of the page.
I'm not sure where the garbage location is. Maybe the owner can confirm.
Yeah, this one I discussed with our consultant, provide the tree information report. Our understanding is that the tree can be a little flexible. So exact location will be on our tree in planting plan. And also the garbage collection, as I mentioned earlier, we will design the location. Could be in the backyard or could be in the principal building.
Within the building?
Yeah. The
Okay.
2 options we'll consider.
Okay. That'll certainly address your issues with mice and things like that.
So that means that there will be another process, if there are other
They
plans that
haven't,
come
they
up.
haven't completed their design
Okay.
yet, so
Okay.
they're gonna look to do
Okay.
that.
All right,
Any other questions, Mr. Bolts?
great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm
Yes,
good.
thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you. And just to answer one of your queries, I don't think that this is a minor change, but maybe that will address one of the tests.
But you can't just, you need to have some reasoning behind it, not
Okay.
just say it does not meet
Yeah.
the minor test.
I was wondering if it's possible to give us like maybe a clarity in terms of rules of what to bring to an audience like this, a hearing like this for future hearings, if possible.
There is something like
in the
that on our
letters.
website, is there not?
Yeah.
Yes,
'cause
Mr. Chair, it is addressed through the website, and I believe I sent you a link yesterday to the agenda on our website, not your counselor's website.
Yeah, to the, and it's
Committee of
pretty much
Adjustment.
posting everything, but it doesn't tell us, like, I read through the website a lot and there's a lot of information, so. But never, I didn't see these for testing, so I'll definitely look into it, but
Sure.
I can email. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Okay, so now I'd like to ask the applicant, who has the last word, to please make a presentation if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Board, and thank you for the city staff and considering our application. Also, I really appreciate all the speaker give the comment. We see a big change along the Woodroffe, and we also see there's already few long semi-detached along the Woodroffe, a few block away. So our proposal just efficiently utilize the existing site, try to create more residential unit by using existing city structure and school and the transportation. So we provide more housing unit in the missing middle class in compact form. So we will to promote the city growth.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Okay, I'd now like to ask the panel if they would like to adjourn this application. Sorry, reserve, yes, reserve this application. All those in favor? This application is going to be reserved. You'll get a written response, a written answer in 10 days, sir. Thank you
Sure.
very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pardon? Mention it to the people that spoke as well. So all those that spoke, if you did prepare one of these requests to speak and asked for a copy of the written decision, one will be provided to you in 10 days as well. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next application, which is 814 High Street, and we'll address 820 High Street at the same time. I'd like to see if Mr. Ritzy can come back down. Afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
So we have a couple of things to address on the, to amend the variances. Came in a little late. So amendment to variance D to permit a reduced total landscape area of 26.1 when original was 26.9. And it would be 171 square meters where before it was 49.3. And whereas the bylaw requires a total landscaped area of 30% or and 196.2 is now the area from 183. Is that correct, sir?
Right.
Okay. Can you please give us a brief description of your application today?
I guess I have something online I can put up.
Is there an application presentation? Yeah.
So perhaps the, I can address the consent or the first.
Sure.
Which address the comments made earlier about the four tests. If you go back to the survey, which that's the existing survey. So currently there are two lots, and we with two dwellings on each, with one dwelling in each lot. One is a duplex and one is a single family dwelling, a total of 3 units. We are basically making a lot line adjustment to basically equal the two lots to come close to the 18-meter requirement for stacked units lot width. The next slide, can I get the next slide? There's one with the photographs earlier. I just show the. So that's the those are the two existing dwellings. On the right is the duplex, and on the left is a single family dwelling. And these will so in other words, the fabric has not changed, just the lot line. So we still have two lots. The in terms of the I'll address just basically on the Planning Act in terms of the severance. You know, the piece of the Planning Act in terms of the official plan is lot fabric, which we have not. As I said, we're retaining 2 lots. We're just making 2 lots of equal size for the development. And there's all new servicing, of course, from each lot. There's existing services, which will be obviously upgraded for the two 8-unit dwellings on each lot. There is currently 2 driveways. Now we're to a single driveway. And I'd like to just, there was a comment that came in from one resident about the lack, was concerned about the lack of street parking. One of the variances that we are asking for is a reduction in parking, which we still provide. In the reduction, we still provide 1 parking space per unit, as well as 1 visitor parking space. So we don't feel we're adversely affecting the street parking situation. As this photo indicates, this was taken around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was no visible sign that there was overcrowding the streets. Next slide. I just want to show the context. So this is within the shadows of high rises. It's becoming a higher density area. That's basically the single with the high rise in the background. Next slide, please. Again, across the street, there are multiples. This is a 3.5-story dwelling, the same form as what we're proposing on the other side of the street, with multiple dwellings, single driveway, which we're providing as well. Next slide, please. This is again another multiple unit with an interior single driveway servicing. I believe this is about 24 units, which is more dense than what we're proposing with 16 units total. Next slide, please. And this is beside us to the north It's a 3-story townhome. And again, multiple dwelling configuration. The minor variance that we're requesting besides the parking is the front yard setback. We've done an averaging of 4.5 and we've gone to 3 meters, but that 3 meters is actually to the porch, which has occupancy below it. It's actually still 4 meters to the building face. So we feel the difference of 0.85 meters is minor in nature. We're retaining the side yard setbacks and we're looking for a small reduction in the rear yard setback. I believe it's within half a meter difference between what is required and what we're requesting. We've worked with the parking lot. The garbage area is stored underneath the built-out portion in the center of the lot, keeping it away from the perimeter. And we have revised the parking configuration to provide more landscaped area for tree planting, which the tree report shows on the edge conditions.
30 seconds, sir.
Building height, we're actually permitted in this zone to be 14.5 meters and we're well below that. So we've, in terms of scale, we've kept the scale to what is predominant in the area. And we're in the process of doing our site grading to handle issues such as stormwater management, et cetera. Back to the Planning Act, they'll all require the servicing through civil engineering, and approval is one of our conditions in our application.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the applicant. Mr. Barrett? Ms. McLean? Mr. Baltz? I just want to make sure, because you bounced, we were dealing with, I think, at the front end, number 3, on the application number 2 having to do with 814. And then you started talking about 820 and
Which are both the same.
agreed, but I have to address a couple of things
Right.
because in the notice, there has to be an amendment made to variance D, yes, of 820's application. And in other words, it's to read now to permit total landscape area of 25% or 162.4, where before it was 27.4% and 50.2 meters. And whereas the bylaw requires a yard landscaped area of 30% or 194.8 square meters, whereas before it was 183.3 meters. Is that correct?
Correct.
I just want to read that into the record so it gets noted.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'd like to now ask the planner to have some comments on this application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So planning and staff have no concerns with this application. I would just like to go into appreciate how the applicant has worked extensively with planning staff for, it's been about a year now that we've been going back and forth to resolve, and we're very pleased with this revised design, which we believe really addresses the landscaping on the site and the hardscaping, and all our concerns have been addressed and regarding the design and the variances. And in terms of the lot shape, I just want to comment that the lot line adjustment, we're pleased that will create a more evenly sized parcels between the 2 lots. So it's definitely preferable, I think, in this case.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchen. Mr. Baltz, do you have any questions for the planning department?
No, I think it's been answered already that the severance meets the tests in the opinion of the planning department. Yeah. In particular, that the new dimension and shape of the newly severed lots are better than what's there. Correct.
Ms. McLean, any questions? Mr. Barrett, any questions? No, no questions. Okay, great. Are there any members from the public that would like to speak on this application, either in person or online? No, there's no one online or in person. Are you getting up to speak, sir?
Yes,
Come on down and have a seat.
not against this property. It's to do with all the properties that have been allocated for large dwellings.
Can you please press the green button? State your name and your address, sir.
Reginald Wiegand, 950 Woodroffe Avenue.
Okay, please go ahead, sir. You have 5 minutes.
So the size of the buildings going in these lots are extremely big. They're all asking for encroachments. And is there a percentage of green space that builders have to keep?
Asking me?
Anybody?
Planning Department, can you answer that, please, Ms. Kaching?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are provisions now which exist, which require a minimum landscaping percentage of 15% for
All?
Please, sir.
for parking lots. It's if there's a parking lot, you have to have 15% of the parking lot, which is landscaped, and up to 70% of the rear yard.
Excuse me, parking lot that's landscaped?
That has to be incorporated into the parking lot. So for example, when you see like a parking island within a parking lot or
Well, that's
around.
not green space. Parking is pavement. So, because I drive around a lot, I see all these large, big houses and not one stitch of grass, not one tree. So,
They are doing some of these things on this particular property. I know you wanted to speak about every piece of development going on in the city, but we can't address that. We're dealing solely with this issue today and this application. Okay, I think better placed would be a discussion with your counselor and ask him what he is supporting, because ultimately they're the ones that push the zoning bylaw and the requirements within the zoning bylaw. So that would be my suggestion to you, to speak to him.
okay,
But
so,
this is not the forum to do that, sir.
no, it isn't. However, you have to get it across somehow or another. Because on Chicago Private, they went out 2 feet in front. So you walk out your front door, I can see all the way up to the Queensway, all the way down to Carling Avenue, 50 houses are all in one line. Now I can't see 3 houses down one way. Now again, another one is gonna come up and it's gonna block everything. There's not gonna be any snow on the front lawns at all, so that's my spiel, and appreciate it, and I hope these large houses get smaller.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. Okay, so I now like to ask the panel, or sorry, ask the applicant if you'd like to make any final comments.
No, I think the planner had addressed that it's been an ongoing back and forth issue, creative piece and between forestry, transportation and planning. And that to address that particular comment, these are not easy projects to work within the guidelines. And we all try and respect the important parts of what goes into construction in terms of the neighborhood. We're all mindful of the neighborhood because everybody's trying to avoid complaints down the future.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to adjourn this up, sorry, not adjourn, reserve this application. All those wanting to reserve, please raise your hands. Your application will be reserved, sir, and we'll give you a decision in 10 days. Thank you. That's for both application number 3, having to do 814 High Street, and 820 High Street, application number 2 and 3. Now, we're moving on to our last application today, having to do with 512 Moodie Street. And I'm looking for Jacob Bolduc, Thomas Freeman.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm
Good
Thomas Freeman, and I'm joined by my colleague Jacob Bolduc.
And your address, please, sir.
Yes, our address is 396 Cooper Street.
Thank you. If you'd like to give us a brief description of your application today, that would be appreciated.
Could I ask the coordinator to please share my slides? So good afternoon, Chair and members of committee. We are here today representing the owners of 512 Moodie Drive. The owner is proposing to convert the existing one-story single detached dwelling into a rooming house with 12 rooming units. and variances are sought for the number of rooming units, whereas the bylaw permits 7 rooming units. We are proposing 12, and variances are also requested for the parking area. Next slide, please. The subject site is located on the west side of Moodie Drive within the neighborhood of Bell's Corners. Site has a total area of approximately 1,985 square meters, a total lot frontage of 33.5 meters, and a depth of approximately 60 meters. The site is currently occupied by a 1-story single detached dwelling. Next slide, please. So the proposal will convert the existing dwelling within the existing footprint into a 12-unit rooming house with shared amenity spaces. A minor variance is requested to seek relief from section 155 sub 2, which permits a rooming house with a maximum of 7 rooming units on R1 lots fronting on and having direct vehicular access to an arterial or major collector road, and where there are no secondary dwelling units. Additionally, minor variances are sought for the proposed driveway and parking spaces. One for a portion of the driveway that extends in front of the house, where driveways are prohibited under section 107.3 of the zoning bylaw. This is in relation to the existing garage being converted into living space. The driveway there's a small sliver of the driveway that does extend in front of the dwelling. So the bylaw prohibits any portion of the driveway to be in front of the dwelling, but the intent there is to prohibit front yard parking. In this case, it's a small sliver and we're not proposing any parking in the front yard. Also requested variance for the driveway width, as well as the 2 parallel parking spaces. We had contemplated putting these further into the site as full-size spaces, but that would eat into the green space and provide for more hardscaping. We feel that this orientation, where they can pull in to each space independently, provides for more green space on site and a better configuration. Next slide, please. So I'll quickly run through the 4 tests. So the first test being, does the proposal maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The subject property is designated neighborhood within the outer urban transect in the official plan. The application is consistent with the policies related to the outer urban transect and the neighborhood designation, the growth management framework, urban design, and sustainable modes of transportation. This application contributes to the vision of a gradual evolution towards 15-minute neighborhoods by providing a denser development compatible with the existing built form within the outer urban transect and provides for more options for housing. Next slide, please. Does the proposal maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The subject property is zoned first residential density subzone FF, R1FF in the City of Ottawa Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw. Rooming unit, so the 7 rooming units are permitted as of right on this property. We're proposing 12. This is in line with 12 bedrooms being permitted in an as of right built form where 3 units are provided under the Bill 23 legislation, which permits up to 3 units on a residential lot, and the zoning bylaw permits 4 bedrooms for each of those dwelling units, which equates to 12 bedrooms. In this case, we are proposing 12 rooming units. Therefore, and the reduced width, driveway width will still enable the function of the parking lot, similar to the shared driveway configuration, 3-meter wide driveway width elsewhere in the city. And the reduced driveway enables the parallel parking spaces along the southern facade of the dwelling while providing access to the parking lot. We believe that it maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please.
30 seconds, sir.
The proposed renovation on the existing one-story single detached dwelling continues to contribute to in height and building envelope size with the adjacent residential unit and maintains the character of a single detached dwelling. The increase from the currently permitted 7 to the proposed 12 units is desirable to increase the available rental housing stock within the urban area and within proximity to existing commercial amenities. Therefore, the proposal is desirable and appropriate for the development and use of the land. Next slide, please.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a question for you. How big is the building now? Like, it was tough to read on the slide, so.
So the existing one-story house, it has a total square meterage of 405.8 square meters. So it's approximately 4,300 square feet.
That's the ground floor and the basement.
And the basement, the
Okay.
total.
Correct.
Okay, so 2,200 square feet approximately on each floor. How big are your bedrooms going to be?
The bedrooms are approximately ranging in size between 250 square meters and 300 square meters.
Square meters? That means 10 times. It's 2,500 square feet for one.
Sorry, square feet, my mistake.
No worries. It's okay. So how many of them are at 250 square feet?
Approximately 7.
7 at 250. And what's the next size?
And there's a few at approximately 275. And
Few is how many? 2 or 3?
sorry, I'm just counting these. Forgive me. So there's about 8 at 250 and 1 at 275 and 2 at 300.
That's 11.
And sorry, I missed 1 at 250.
So how many at 250? 9 or 8?
9.
9,
correct.
okay. 1 at 275 and 2 at 300, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how much of that area is going to be amenity space? I'm talking about kitchens, bathrooms.
So there is additional to the shared, well, there is a kitchen. There's a shared kitchen and living area.
How large is that?
About 270 square feet.
For the kitchen? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how much circulation space have you provided for that goes from the front entrance to get to all the bathrooms, to get to the kitchens, to get to the bedrooms, to get to another exit?
So that's one item that's important to note as part of the development of this rooming house. Each unit has its own individual washroom, but the
Okay.
kitchen facilities are common.
Okay. And again, how much circulation space did you provide for getting to then everybody's own space and to get out of the building?
There's a central corridor that goes through the building,
Okay.
but
Would
I
you
don't,
say 25% of the total square footage that you've allotted to different spaces?
no, if we were to include the vestibule and the total hallways, I would say it's less than 25, but not much less.
So we'll say 20% just for a number?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay. So Okay, I'm gonna do some calculations and I'm gonna pass to one of my colleagues. Mr. Barrett, would you like to go forward now with some questions?
Yes, it's very hard to read the plans, considering the size of the plan that we received, as well as the number of rooms and spaces. So could we maybe have it up on the screen, please? Thank you. So this is on the existing footprint of the home, correct? There's no addition to the home?
That's correct. Sorry. The only change is the garage is being converted from a garage to living space, but it's still within the same footprint and foundation and structure.
Okay. And the spaces in the yard are being used, like the storage shed is being used as a garbage shed, is that correct, or?
That's correct.
Okay. And can you give us an overview of what else is going into the backyard that makes it a desirable place to be?
Yeah, so the shed is being converted to store the garbage as well as provide for bike parking for the residents. And the rest of the yard is provided as amenity space for the residents.
So that's a fairly large amenity space, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, when I looked at the amenity space earlier, it was somewhere in the range of 500 square meters. It's a quite sizable lot, and the intention behind the development is to maintain the existing envelope and form and the appearance of a single detached dwelling while increasing the density within the building to what is generally permitted under the zoning bylaw, but while maintaining those amenities that would be required for a regular single detached dwelling. So it's a sizable rear yard, maintaining generally, I believe, all of the trees. There is a new parking area because instead of the garage and driving straight in, there's now a parking area at the rear. That parking area is kept to the minimum required under the zoning bylaw for 6 spaces. I would note that we've also triggered several variances. Instead of going with a fully compliant parking lot area, we felt that it would increase the size of the drive aisle and increase the size of the parking in the rear yard. And we wanted to keep it away from some of the mature trees following conversations with staff and forestry. So the intent has always been to keep parking in the rear yard and away from that front yard parking condition that we want to avoid, while allowing for a lot of green space and a converted accessory structure to take care of the waste management as well as bicycle parking.
And my last comment, is fencing proposed for the lot?
At this time, there's only the existing fencing. There's no new fencing proposed as part of the plan. We did get several questions from neighbors, including to the rear and to the north, about replacing fencing or discussions. We've provided the contact information from the owner to those neighbors, at least to the neighbors to the north, and we'd be happy to pass that along to any other immediate neighbor about discussing the fencing, but there's no commitment at this time to replace new fencing.
And what is the existing fencing? Is it board on board or?
It's different on all 3 sides. I believe it's board on the north, and then there's some chain link that's on the rear property that's actually mostly landscaped. And then there's another small fence on the west side that doesn't run the whole length of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Ms. McLean if she's got any questions for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions, just on the parking configuration. I'm struggling with the need for those 2 parallel parking spaces. And I don't understand completely. I hear what you're saying. If you added 2 more in with the proposed parking area, it would decrease the amenity area, the green space, but there is an awful lot of green space on that lot. I think you just indicated that. The second question, or the second problem, or what I'm struggling with, is the rationale of Bill 23 and the contention that you could put 12 bedrooms in this place under Bill 23. Could you convert this existing building under Bill to 3 units with 4 bedrooms?
I'll speak to the first question about the parking. So we wanted to maintain the minimum amount of parking required because we did anticipate that we would receive questions from the community about how are you going to park this? It's a question we receive across all our files. So rather than reduce the amount of parking overall in order to protect for that tree that is specifically right adjacent to our parking lot, we said, we'll provide the minimum, but how can we get creative? And so we looked at small car parking, which you're allowed up to 50%. We're proposing 3. We've located 2 of those immediately adjacent to the house. And as you've noted, they are considered parallel parking spaces because they are right up against the wall. If you look at the configuration, you'll note that they don't function the same way we think of like curbside parallel parking. You can effectively drive into either one of them directly. So there's no requirement to parallel park to access those spaces, which is why we felt comfortable putting them on the side of the building, because you can basically drive right in like a regular parking space. And then by locating there, we were actually able to get the 3-meter drive aisle requirement in order to minimize the amount of hardscape that would be required on that side and provide a little bit of a green landscape buffer on the edge of the driveway to the property line. The goal of all of that was to have the parking intrude as least as possible into the rear yard while also keeping it out of the front yard and trying to manage that side yard condition. So by doing that, there's actually on the site plan, you'll note the CRZ of several mature trees. We would have had to push the driveway to avoid the removal of those trees, sort of further into the middle. It would kind of have to S shape in rather than stay right along the property line to protect for those critical root zones. Thank you, coordinator, for pulling that up. Might be a little difficult to see, but if you look just south of our identified snow accumulation area, which is proposed for snow storage in the winter, which is right at the end, which is why we have sort of the drop off in the driveway there. You can see circles representing the CRZs for several mature trees that are identified in that area. So for the drive aisle to continue, we would have more parking. And this will come up later, I'm sure, because I noticed there's one of the neighbors that we spoke to. We would have more parking spaces that would actually face north. And so this was our compromise in order to mitigate for the amount of hardscape in the backyard, protect for the trees. Your point is well taken that there's a lot of landscaping back there and a lot more room for a traditional parking configuration. We thought this was a more agreeable solution and we're not anticipating any adverse impacts.
I guess on the argument or the contention of the
Apologies.
3 dwelling units with 4 bedrooms.
Yeah, so the logic there is as we mentioned, an apartment built, a dwelling apartment in the city of Ottawa zoning bylaws allowed 4 bedrooms before it becomes an oversized dwelling unit. At that point, there's other provisions of the zoning bylaw that would apply. So under Bill 23, you're like permitted up to 3 units on any single semi or row house lot. 2 of those would technically be considered accessory dwelling units, and there would be different parking provisions that would apply. In fact, no parking would be permitted for those. So we'd be looking at a parking rate of only 1 car for 3 units, which could contain up to about 12 bedrooms. So we think we're addressing a little bit the parking question there. To your point of could you realistically fit 12 bedrooms across 3 units? I can't speak from a building code perspective. I'm not an architect. I'm not an expert. I don't want to wade into that. But I think what we've demonstrated here is that within the 4,400 square feet, there's certainly enough room for 3 large apartments and that those could conceivably contain 4 bedrooms each.
Mr. Bullis, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I when we get to the comments from planning, I'll probably ask this one again. But in your opinion, what was the intent in the zoning bylaw of limiting the number of rooming units to 7?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I mean, it's consistent with a single detached dwelling and typically the density or the number of people or rooms that you would have within a single detached dwelling. My understanding is those rooming house provisions were drafted prior to Bill 23 and therefore wouldn't contemplate the possibility of having 2 additional ADUs. So if you're imagining an equivalent density of 7 rooming units to 1 single detached dwelling, then what we're proposing here certainly is within the same ballpark. If you were to consider 7 for 1, in this case, we're proposing 12 against 3.
But 7 was chosen, and again, I'm going to ask planning, this was chosen because it was a number that was considered to fit within a typical single dwelling.
I would say within a dwelling unit, yeah, which could apply to a single detached dwelling.
Right. Okay.
But again, that would apply to various scenarios across the city. I mean, you'd have various sized lots that may be eligible for this criteria. This is a particularly large lot with a particularly large house.
What I'm getting at there is it's all right. I will get to the next, which is my next question. So what would be the permitted building envelope?
The permitted building envelope would be larger than as is.
Yeah, I think would it be fair to say it would be something like twice the size?
In order to fit 12 rooms?
No, if you were to maximize the structure you were building on this lot without going for variances.
Yeah, we didn't do a formal analysis on the total developable area under that condition because our scope was limited to, keeping the existing house and keeping the form and function of a single detached. But generally speaking, it would be considerably larger. Our maximum lot coverage, as Thomas is showing me here, is about 45%.
Yeah.
And right now we're at about 12.
Right.
So
Okay.
when you factor in the setbacks and minimum landscaped areas, parking requirements, depending again against the two, there's more parking required for this.
This building could be enlarged considerably without adding a story or without asking for more variances.
Correct.
And yeah, okay.
I would also note to that point that this is a small little R1 area that only contains a couple lots. Just about everything around us is owned R3 or R4. Yeah. So it's not characterized as an area of singles except to the southeast.
But we're not limited. I guess my point is that we're not limited here to the building envelope that exists by any zoning considerations. This is a consideration of not wanting to enlarge the existing building and only do construction within the existing envelope, correct?
Correct. It was determined that we could appropriately locate 12 rooming units within the existing envelope.
Member McLean has asked something similar. And you said you weren't an architect. My next question was about whether 3 units could actually fit in there. I would just point out that 3 kitchens and living area would then be required. So I know.
But you also would not have 12 individual washrooms. So there would be some GFA savings elsewhere.
Okay. I think some of the people who commented, the letters I've seen have brought this up, but I was struck by the notations in the rear yard that a new dog park and a new backyard sports area are contemplated, which sounds to me like potentially disruptive uses in a residential area. What is this?
Yeah, I've spoken to the architect or the designer about it, and I've spoken to the client as well. They were trying to identify simply the I guess the scale of the landscaped area in the rear yard. They were trying to demonstrate that there was a sizable rear yard that could be used for amenity space, and that we're not just keeping a small grassed area for the purposes of meeting the bylaws. So we have advised them that identifying a community garden area and a dog park and a backyard sports area was less than ideal, and we've asked for them to remove those tags. The idea was simply to demonstrate that there's a large amount of space back there. Some of the comments we got from the community are those going to be public spaces? So I'd like to address that. Absolutely not. Those are private amenity spaces. We just wanted to demonstrate, for example, that you could have a dog run area in case some of the people in the building had pets. You could also have a separate amenity area for sitting. You would have shaded areas, sunny areas. It's quite a sizable rear yard.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I only have a couple more.
Sure.
So the shared kitchen and the shared living room to some extent are critical for defining this as a rooming house. We've looked at the kitchen, which I noted on the plans. I can bring them up if you like again, but it's not only a kitchen, it's also the laundry area, correct? So the size of that room is actually two. It's about 9 by 12, if I measured that correctly. So about 6 by 10, because there's an entry area, is actually kitchen space. In your opinion, can 12 or more people, depending on how many are in each unit, use that size kitchen effectively?
I think it would depend on the needs of the individuals within those units. Some people may choose to use meal services or alternative means. Some people may choose to cook. It's a shared living arrangement, so it would be up to the tenants to find a way to cooperate and make use of that space efficiently.
In your opinion, that is adequate for 12 or more people to eat?
I'm not going to speak to what the building code requires, but my understanding is it's compliant. In my professional planning opinion, additional kitchen space could certainly be welcomed, but I don't necessarily see it as an issue.
Same question for the living room, which is 10 by 11-ish. Is that actually how many people can fit in there?
Are you asking if it's the intent of the living room to be used by all of the tenants at all times together?
Reasonable number of tenants, if people want to sit around and watch TV or whatever it is you're going to do in the amenity spaces. Is this really a practical space? I mean, obviously, I'm getting here at the decision not to enlarge the building envelope, but to ask for more units in what is a relatively small and typical building envelope. And that's squeezing these units. I mean, the size of, not the units, the amenity space and the kitchen.
I don't know if I thank you for your comment. If I may respond, I don't think I would characterize the existing building as small. 4,400 square feet is quite sizable. I can understand the comment with respect to increasing the amount of communal space within the building, but I would also note that the rooming units are quite large. You know, I lived in a 300 square foot bachelor that had everything at one point. In this case, you're having a private washroom and a larger room for perhaps having a guest or whatever. You could accommodate that within your unit. They're not simply small bedrooms. They're quite sizable rooming units.
And final question, Mr. Chair. The living room, which we just discussed, is set up exactly like a living unit. It's got the same bar counter. It's got its own bathroom, which seems a little bit redundant if you have 12 more bathrooms available. To me, this looks like another living unit.
Yep, I could understand that concern. We've discussed that with the applicant, or sorry, with the owner. We may note that we are here to ask for 12. We believe that 12 is appropriate, given the argument that we put forth under the zoning bylaw on Bill 23 and the permission to have 3 units in a building. If they were to seek to convert that unit, then we would have to come back and apply for another minor variance. So I would not support that conversion under this application. I don't believe that's the intent. Nothing has been indicated to me that we're going over 12. I also would note that rooming houses are licensed in the city of Ottawa.
Yes.
And that there's a process to make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so 4,300 square foot building occupies 12% of the buildable area, correct?
Across both floors, yeah. So the footprint is 2,200, yep.
Okay, so if you needed to put 2 more buildings on this site, you could probably easily do that. And be able to accomplish the 4 units per building with separate ownership or separate residents, separate units.
The building could be enlarged, yes.
You could also put 2 other units on the property, correct?
No, my understanding is you cannot put accessory dwelling units in a building that contains a rooming unit. You can't mix rooming units and dwelling units outside of very specific conditions like a retirement home.
Okay,
So I don't believe we're entitled to an ADU, but perhaps it's a question for staff.
so you're not intending then to build out the site to its maximum?
Not under this application, no, and not to my
No, not
knowledge
under
in
this
general.
application, but if you tore down the building, you probably could put 3 units, right? Right?
If we tore down the building under the existing R1FF zoning, we'd be entitled to a single detached dwelling with 2 accessory dwelling units totaling 3 units, yes.
3 units each.
No, 3 units total. Are you saying if we were to sever the
How many
property?
bedrooms would you be able to put on the property if you maximized it?
12.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Now I'd like to move on to planning and have planning make some comments with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to start out by saying that the city really encourages applications which are trying to establish a legal rooming house, as is today. We see a lot of examples across the city. I'm sure you're aware of yourself where we have illegal rooming houses which are causing many of the concerns which were expressed by some of the residents who wrote in today. So I think that's a good thing is what I'm trying to say. And overall, staff don't have concerns with this application. I believe that the layout which they're trying to do with the current configuration does make sense since they're trying to utilize the existing building. I agree with the points that Mr. Baldock has made with regards to their parking configuration in terms of trying to save the trees on the outside. I am happy to address the questions of the members. I understand regarding the rooming units themselves, but overall, staff are in agreement with what the variances they're proposing, trying to maintain the existing built form.
Thank you. I'd like to ask panel for questions. Mr. Bolts?
I'll address to you 2 of the questions, or 2.5. I'd like to go back to the intent in the zoning bylaw of picking 7.
Absolutely. So I talked to policy staff today and we went back to the 2018 report, which amended the rooming house provisions, but he advised me that the 7 number actually predates the current zoning bylaw consolidation. The 7 number was, it applies only to rooming houses which are permitted on arterial streets. And the mind behind that was there's some more flexibility when permitting rooming house, the number of bedrooms when it's along an arterial road. Recognizing, you know, arterial road is a little bit different than your regular character, but staff would also like to recognize that the 7 number does not necessarily align with the policies we have today in terms of the official plan as well as at the provincial level regarding housing.
So in higher zones, like R4 zones, that where rooming houses are allowed as of right in the residential areas, what's the limit there?
I would have to verify exactly what the limit is outside the R1.
So I'll move on to the quickly. The kitchen and the living room, I'll combine those, seem to me, from you can tell from my questions, possibly not functional for the number of residents that are going to be here. So can you address that?
Absolutely. So from a zoning perspective, we aren't looking at the size of the kitchen or the living area. We are concerned with the definition of a rooming house specifies communal amenity area, and that it does not regarding the size. And that's why in this case, while I understand that practically there may be concerns in how they share it, from a zoning perspective, we have to accept it as it is, as they're proposing, saying it's going to function. I would also know, I think that, I know on the floor plans, I think there's an ensuite bathroom and as well as kitchen culinary facilities as well referred to. And there's like a bar area, there's a sink. And I spoke to the zoning plans examiner about this. And I've also advised the applicant in terms of how this gets treated, because I think it might be of interest to the panel members. So because they have culinary facilities and an ensuite bathroom, they actually do end up treating it as an apartment, as from a development charge area. Now, this is just at a building standpoint. This doesn't, we don't consider it planning because it's related to the floor plans. And so it's like, interestingly enough, because of that, they will development charge it as an apartment unit. But when it's with us at zoning, we rule it as a rooming unit because of the communal kitchen and living area.
And so what happens from a zoning compliance standpoint if these bar areas in each room, which already have a sink and a refrigerator, sprout microwaves and hot, toaster ovens and hot plates?
So I can't speak as a zoning plan examiner, but I can try to provide some clarification in terms of, so if an applicant wants to have culinary facilities, they're allowed to do that. My understanding that the city won't tell them to take out their bar. It's just a matter of the development charges. And if that's something that it can be quite high, it ranges between, 13,000 to 17,000 because of these combined facilities. And so if you're going to provide those I would say in-room amenity for your tenants, it comes at a cost. Although I understand that doesn't address your concern with your functioning as apartments, why are they allowed to exist as rooming units? And I think that's a little bit of a challenge, and it's something that we're looking to, we recognize the gap is what I'm trying to say. And this came up with my discussion with the zoning plan examiner, and how do we kind of bridge the gap between what happens at building permit, which is out of the scope of planning, and then what's in the zoning, so that we don't have things like this causing confusion like they are today.
I do thank the planning for providing the definition of a rooming house in the report.
Thank you. Ms. McLean.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barrett.
Just a question to staff with regards to the impact of small kitchens versus would the impact be of moving this outdoors in the sense that there's space to cook, barbecues and that type of thing? I think the size of the existing lot will create more outside activity than inside activity. That's just a comment. Can you mention?
So just to clarify, your concern is that because of the size of the kitchen area that people will be cooking outside, that's what it will result in?
Possibly, yes.
I'm sure that's a possibility. I'm not sure. I'm sure if the winters keep warming up.
No,
but it's not something that I consider review, but I'm sure it's possible, but I would
hope,
Yes,
but it doesn't happen.
it's a possibility. Thank you.
It's a possibility. Yes.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the public if they have any questions or comments. We have two registered speakers. Craig Ritchie, are you available? Come on down.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name and your address, sir.
Craig Ritchie, 62 Arnold Drive.
Okay. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation, sir.
Thank you, sir. My concern is parking and pedestrian traffic and safety. This rooming house is going to be on Moodie Drive. There's going to be a minimum of 12 people up to 24 people in this rooming house. It'll have 6 parking spaces. And I'd like to mention there's absolutely no parking on Moodie Drive. So if you're going to have street parking, you're going to have to go across Moodie Drive, which is 4 lanes of high-speed traffic. You have to park either on Old Richmond Road, Black Forest, or Arnold. Now, I'm not sure if the applicant has applied to the United Church at the corner, if they can park on their private parking or not. Regardless, people are going to have to cross over Moodie Drive. And the speed on Moodie Drive in that location, when you're heading south, is between 60 and 70 kilometers per hour. Coming north is 60 to 80. I mean, there's a sign right by the United Church that tells you the speeds. My concern is the safety. Like you have 12, 24 people. They probably have friends. They're going to come and visit. Where are they going to park? They're all going to have to cross Moodie Drive. I know for sure that the city will never put lights up at that intersection. So they're going to be taking their risk crossing a very dangerous intersection. In addition, that intersection is a fire route from the fire station on Old Richmond Road that carries south and then goes down Moodie. So I don't know if that's been taken into consideration. It's not so much the rooming house itself, it's the people that are going to have to cross this road. And I think it was about 2-3 years ago, a woman was killed at that intersection. So does the city look at that part of this application? I know it's not exactly what they're talking about, but it's a safety issue for pedestrians in the area and the people who are going to live there and their guests. So I guess that would be my concern. Is that a fair question?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. Again, to object to the application, you have to follow the 4 tests that we were just talking about it before.
Yeah, so I guess if you're going to put me in one of those 4, it's, I guess, objecting to the actual rooming house due to safety concerns. Is that legit?
Any comment by the public is legitimate. So you've got a concern, okay?
Sure.
Whether or not it passes the test of being something that would maybe delay or oppose this application, I can't say. But you have the right to make it, sir. It's fine, Ham. Have you completed your comments, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr.
Ritchie.
Ritchie? George? No, sorry. Schmaltz?
Are there problems? There are other large developments right near there. Are there problems with visitors parking elsewhere and crossing for those?
The ones that have direct access to Moodie are single-family dwellings only. All the others are on the off streets.
And there's no parking on the off streets?
It varies depending on where you are, because in certain areas, like on my street, Arnold, there's no parking on one side of the street 24 hours a day. It's limited during the week, 8 to 4 on one side. On all those areas, it's residential. On Old Richmond Road, on the other side of the church, there's a bunch of townhouses. So there's also a lot of people that park on the street there also. But it's regular street parking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. You can, but we're going to have another speaker before you, and then you can come down. If you wouldn't mind coming down and just filling out a form, we'll be able to get you on the speakers list. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Next person registered to speak is Michelle Laflamme. Are you available?
Good afternoon.
Good
My name
afternoon.
is Michelle Laflamme. I live at 510 Moodie Drive. That's the property, abutting property on the north side. I don't know if you have read all my comments. I wasn't planning on repeating everything, but if it's useful, I can just give
You have 5 minutes. You
Okay,
can take up your
perfect.
5 minutes the way you like.
So I want to address two of the tests. The first one that I want is the minor variance. My first point is from the measurements perspective, like increasing from 7 to 12 unit, like mathematically it's 70%. So right there, to me, it raises a flag. Let me just go through my notes. Yeah, and it's different, like from the past, there was a family there with 3 adults and 1 child. So for the neighborhood, it's going to be a different use of the backyard. 12 units doesn't necessarily equate to 12 people. We may have like couples sharing a room, a parent with children. So maybe we'll end up 24 people on that site, maybe more. Like we're not sure. And the plans that were circulate, as was mentioned, allows for 6 parking spots and 15 bike spaces. So that means that we're probably in the normal range of 20 people occupying that site. So that's more than a minor variance. So that was from the measurement perspective. The other one is from the use of the land or the impact that it will have on the abutting properties. And I'm the one that shares the biggest property line. So some of them, the concern I'll express from my point of view, but I'm aware that other people around the lot have expressed different points. The first one is as I said, I wasn't expecting to present, but you'll see in the documentation pictures of the site, like there's the garbage area that is along my property line that those 20 people will have to bring their garbage like all times a day. The biking space is in the same area. They have the closing line area. And right now we have the board-on-board fence that is only 5 foot tall and it's 25 years old. So that won't be enough to ensure privacy. There's the parking area we were talking about, like some of the parking is perpendicular to my living room window. So there will be like lights flashing, people maneuvering the cars in and out at any time of day. The new, as we mentioned, garden area, dog area, sports area, and talking about the limited amenities within the building. One would expect that people will be outdoors during the nice season anyway, so that will bring traffic, noise in the backyard. So that's about, I think it's summarized what I had under. It's not a minor variance from the community perspective. The next point, is it a desirable proposal for the, is it desirable for the appropriate development of the land? First, that's the first and only rooming house. So that's a difference in itself with the density of people. And as Mr. Ritchie mentioned, like Moodie Drive is a very busy street, and the numbers he said, I've been living right at the intersection for 29 years. So I've seen accidents, like countless accidents, a fatal one he was talking about. And actually 2 weeks ago, there was another one. I cannot count, but I know those statistics are available somewhere on the city website. There's also the fact that Moodie Drive is at the intersection of Old Richmond Road. So you have like 4 lanes of traffic on Moodie Drive, and then the junction. It's a very dangerous area. A few other facts I don't know if you're aware of. On the west side of, on the east side of Moodie Drive, there's a sidewalk. But on the west side, there's a maintenance strip, so that it looks like a sidewalk. It's paved, but it's not plowed in the winter. So pedestrians either have to cross the street to go on the sidewalk, or they have to walk on the street, which is, like I say, busy highway. So to me, it's dangerous for people. And as we mentioned, we'll have visitors, people may be parking their cars on the street, like it will just increase the traffic, and that I don't think that's desirable. The other fact as well is with those snowbanks growing on the maintenance strip, like usually by the end of the winter, the city removes that, but most of the winter, those snowbanks keep increasing and increasing, and it's really hard to see through when you get out of the driveway, see the incoming cars.
You have 30 seconds, ma'am.
Okay. So in conclusion, like I said, like I've read that there was a petition from the neighborhood, like there was over 75 people that have similar concerns about privacy, noise, traffic, and so on. Our counselor, in response to some of those comments, said that she was not really, actually, I don't want to misquote her, I'll read, not comfortable with the rooming house style with so many people sharing so few amenities. If we are going to create density in our neighborhoods, these conversations on the housing type and the quality of housing provided would be more appropriate at planning and housing committee where traffic assessment would be required. Finally, like I say, I share the longest property line and privacy is what will affect me the most. So from my perspective, and I'm sure all the other neighbors would appreciate, you mentioned a fence, like if a fence to the maximum allowed by city bylaw would be built, I think that would alleviate some of the issues, but still not the traffic and the other side.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I thought the last phrase.
Okay, don't go anywhere. So the panel might have some questions for you.
Okay.
Mr. Barrett, do you have any questions for me? No? Mr. Bowles? No, no questions. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. I'd now like to ask Linda Ward to come down and have an opportunity to address this application. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me speak just at the moment. It's just the parking I would like to address in response to what Mr. Ritchie was speaking about as well. I live in the condo corporation, in the condo complex, Manhattan Square, and the location of my condo is right at the adjacent to the fence of 512 Moodie. And I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. It's Linda Ward and
I've got your
Oh, okay,
application.
372 with him. Okay, I'm also on, there's two boards in that complex, a condo board and a co-tenancy board, and I'm on both of them. And one of our biggest issues has been parking. We have a large visitors parking spot, and we also have spots throughout the complex for parking, but we're always having issues with parking, people coming in illegally parking. Our large visitors parking lot gets filled with snow. It's our snow dump in the wintertime, so we lose a lot of our visitors parking. We have people who are wanting to park on the street, which can't. Mr. Ritchie mentioned the church. I'm also a member of the United Church, and we do have certain parking spots available, but only limited number, and there is a fee for the parking. So as Michelle mentioned and Mr. Ritchie mentioned as well, there's the issue is where are all these cars going to go if there aren't sufficient number of spots within the complex when there is so much, the lot is so large to where it could take in more of the parking and maybe eliminate some of the issues that we have on the street.
So I need to have you focus on the 4 tests.
Yes,
and your
yeah.
objections to this application based on the 4 tests.
Yes, yes, I understand that. I guess I had kind of written them down was, I really don't know particularly which one it is. I just wanted to add to Mr. Ritchie's comments about the parking, and I thank you very much for your time on that.
You're welcome.
issue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions for Ms. Ward. Mr. Barrett? No? Ms. McLean?
No.
Mr. Balls? No.
And
No
if I just
questions.
might add one more
Sure.
comment off the record is, this is a very interesting process. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Now, as we typically do, we give the last word to the applicant. I'd like to go ahead and make your comments.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thanks to Ms. Ward and Ms. Laflamme. They both reached out to me independent of this committee. For Ms. Laflamme, we were the reason that we decided to adjourn from the last hearing to give us an extra 2 weeks to speak with her and We did pass the contact information of the owners on to her and they could have further discussions should the development be approved and should it move forward. I just wanted to highlight a little bit the public consultation on this file and how extensive it was. So the owner, along with our help, put letters in the mailboxes of everyone within the 60-meter radius that would later be circulated by the Committee of Adjustment. We also had a meeting with the councillor's office to walk them through the application. So you heard some of their comments earlier. I would note that the councillor did raise some general discussion about how rooming houses should be handled. We have a new zoning bylaw coming, for example. Where it comes to, I guess, two things I want to end on is one is the parking and the general transportation concerns that we've heard. We meet the minimum number of parking spaces here. We can understand that the community may want to see more. We are meeting the minimum and there's no variance tied to that. The variances are tied to minimizing the amount of hardscape required to meet that 6 parking spaces. So we could eliminate those variances other than the one at the front where the driveway passes between the front wall of the house and the street. We're using the existing driveway there. And as the driveway used to go into the garage, which is now being converted, we sort of angled it to the side of the building, but there is still, due to geometry, a portion of that driveway. So otherwise, we could have a more traditional driveway and a more traditional parking arrangement and perhaps allow for more parking. But we've done this to maximize the amount of green space and protect for mature trees. With respect to the speeds in the area, I don't control traffic speeds, but I can understand that's a concern. I would invite them to coordinate with their counselor's office. Similarly for the sidewalk, that was raised by the neighbors to us, that there is sort of just an asphalt pathway on that side. There isn't a full sidewalk and that it's not maintained. So once again, we did raise that to the counselor's office and we would ask that perhaps we look into some changes around this intersection. To the other point, effectively about the use of the building. It's something I got into on one of my other projects. Why a rooming house? Why not traditional apartments? I think traditional apartments are a lot easier for some people to handle. They understand it a little bit better. Rooming houses are a little different. They're frankly pretty rare in terms of licensed rooming houses. I'm sure there's a bunch around the city that operate that way, but it's important with respect to the different tenureships and leasing. So in a regular apartment building, if you had 4 bedrooms, you would have to find a group of 4 people willing to rent that as one unit, 4 people on one lease. You can sublet, there's other things that are available, but an individual would not be able to sign a lease with that landlord for one of those bedrooms on its own because it's tied to the unit. A rooming house kind of provides a different option, and it's something that I do hope we see more of in our community. Good, well-sized, quality rooming houses that would allow an individual to rent a room on an individual basis rather than being locked into a lease with potentially people they don't really know and at least not controlling their destiny that way. So in terms of providing housing options around the city, I would hope to see more quality rooming houses. I think it gives a unique approach to considering housing options for young professionals and others who may not need a whole apartment, but it also helps avoid some of those sticky situations where you have people signing leases on an individual basis, which is not permitted. So there was just a note on that. I want to touch on public consultation. Why rooming houses, I think, are an important part of the unit mix under the official plan. And once again, to reiterate that we don't believe we're bringing a density to the site over and above what would be permitted. Finally, on the parking question, if this was to be a 3-unit building, technically a single detached with 2 ADUs, only 1 parking space would be required, not the 6 that we're proposing. So generally for the same density, those 12 bedrooms they were talking about, and I understand there's some discussion about that equivalency, but rooming houses require 6 at a rate of 0.5. So 12.56. 1 parking space would be required for the detached unit, and under, I believe, Bill 23, ADUs are not permitted to require parking. So just some clarifying remarks there. Thomas, anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel if they have any further questions. Mr. Balls, Ms. McLean, Mr. Barrett. Nope, no further questions. I'd now like to ask the panel if they would like to reserve this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. We will be reserving the application and you will receive notification of our decision within 10 days. Thank you very much for your help.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes our business for today, and we'll see each other in about 3 weeks.